welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by a friend of the show at this point. If you've been here twice, you are a friend, so welcome back. We're here to discuss an absolutely gorgeous, scary, gory, sexy, beautiful novella, jam-packed with so many juicy, beautiful things, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yeah, hi Jen. Thanks for having me back. My name is Koji A. I'm a writer living in Bulgaria, originally from the United States. And the book that we'll talk about today is Hold My Heart.
I was on vacation last week and I am back in the office/library today, catching up with my life. And I read this in one sitting on a plane ride 2 days ago. It is, oh my gosh, I'm speechless, which is not the good thing to say like 2 minutes into your own podcast, but it was such a good ride. And so I'm really curious, last time you were here to discuss Casual, what was the inception point for this one?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. It makes me very happy to hear that you liked it. So Hold My Heart came about because of a short story that I was writing with my writing group. And I actually had a friend that we were both writers, but we were kind of flirting through our writing and revealing more and more about ourselves. And we were kind of like pushing the boundaries. It was a very consensual flirting through the writing. Yeah, the idea for this short story came up, and it was the first scene for Hold My Heart. And in the first scene for Hold My Heart, we have Emma, who actually seeks out a serial killer to kill her. And at the last minute, she decides that she does not want to go through with it. She cannot go through with it, and instead enters into a very interesting relationship with this serial killer. And yeah, so that's kind of where it came about, was just from this not so much flirtatious writing, but more of trying to share more of myself with this other person that ended up, we became very, very good friends, and we still are very good friends and writing buddies.
Oh, nice. That's a really interesting origin story for this piece. And, it makes me think a lot about, something that I think the book engages with very directly, the relationship between sex and violence and how power and desire play into all those things. And the book had me thinking a lot about, why horror and romance or the erotic can go so well together. Can I ask you what drew you to sort of, also exploring those themes more deeply and why you think, it's such a good pairing?
Yeah, sure. So, I didn't even know erotic horror was a genre until maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I think a bunch of indie publishers popped up on the scene saying that they were going to be publishing erotic horror. And I was like, wait, I can do that? I'm allowed to mix those two things. Because I didn't really realize that that was a thing before that. For me, I'm a very sensual person, but that doesn't always mean I'm a sexual person. And that doesn't always mean that I'm a romantic person. It means that really, I really enjoy having sensory information given to me. And so I like to play with that in writing, especially like writing sex in a way that can be erotic, but it doesn't have to be romantic. It can be terrifying, it can be thrilling, it can be scary, because I think that when people experience sex, we don't just experience what is written in like a classic traditional romance. We experience a whole range of emotions and sensations. And so I think it's a really good pairing to look at sex in a whole range of emotions and capabilities and whatnot. And the same with horror, I think, like putting a erotic lens onto horror kind of allows us to see why we enjoy things that scare us, why we enjoy things that make us tremble, that make our hearts beat faster. So I think they pair really well for that reason.
Oh, absolutely. I love that answer. And, I think something I thought a lot about while I was reading this was that something I think that horror and also writing, what you want to call it, sex, spice, there's a lot of names for it in the market these days. Both of them make you think as a writer about what to show and what not to show. Not just in terms of like graphicness, but like also concealing people's thoughts and impulses and sort of motivations and things like that. Um, were there other ways in which perhaps like the process of generating both horror scenes, gory scenes, and the sexy scenes overlap for you?
I think it comes back to what I said before about they're both sensual. For me, I love writing body horror. I love I realize I got a review on Hold My Heart that said something along the lines of this book made the person realize that they're not into blood horror or body horror that deals with blood. And it made me realize that my approach to horror is very sensual. Um, and so I do like, as you mentioned, the leaving bits out and whatnot. I tend to focus in very, very tight on horror scenes, which is the same way that I focus in very tightly on sexual scenes. Like, um, I don't tend to have a big picture of this is what's happening. It becomes very much like this is the sensation that is happening. This is like one centimeter that you're seeing of this entire scene that's going on around you. Um, so yeah, I do think there's a lot of leaving out and leaving to the imagination in both horror and writing sex.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think they both also like sort of and I think that's very relevant in this book too, sort of invite you to experience like the highs and lows of being exposed or of being vulnerable, which are very much, I think, at play in this. So I guess that leads into my question about crafting your two perspectives, because we get chapters from Emma and we get them from Dee as well. So I'm wondering if you could talk about like structuring your novel and how the voices and the perspectives you developed play into that.
Yeah, sure. So I can say before writing this book, I was reading a lot of romance and erotica, which has that dual perspective in it. And so it was something that I wanted to play with because I haven't written a dual perspective book. Um, and the other thing that I wanted to play with is I had two very strong influences to this book. One was Clive Barker's The Hellbound Heart, and the other was William Lindsay Gresham's Nightmare Alley. And what I did when like crafting the two perspectives is I wanted Dee to kind of pull from the Nightmare Alley perspective and bring that kind of feel into the book, whereas Emma would pull more from the Hellbound Heart and have more. Emma almost had a more wet experience in like that's how I would describe it. Like her visceralness was wet, whereas Dee's was more, in my mind, a little more dry, and it, I hope, felt a little more like Nightmare Alley-esque.
That's very interesting. And though, yeah, those are like very interesting properties to draw from. Um, I am really curious too about how, like, using different perspectives and shifting back and forth also lets you play with that thing we were talking about of like what to show and what to reveal. Because you can like pull away from a person either to um, show something new, or you can do it to like cut off dramatically. I hope I'm describing this right, but or you can change perspective to conceal something, if that makes sense. So I'm curious, I guess, about how then um let's talk about the Zilani of it all on top of these two dual perspectives. There's another sort of element here that we're talking about that also allows you to layer on another sort of like genre flavor if you want to talk. Something I really liked about Casual too in your other books is that you do pick from a lot of genres and it gives you like a very broad toolbox in order to do what you do as a writer. So I'd like to know maybe about how Zalani lets you play with genre, if that makes any sense.
I really struggle with genre. I sit down and I try to write a book and I'm like, I am going to write science fiction this time, and then it's not. It's like science fantasy, it's horror, it's anything but just science fiction. So I struggle with genre. But I will say I'll reveal this much. The Jelani pulls the book into what I would call cosmic horror. Um, and I think cosmic horror, what it can lend to any genre when you pull it in, is just this feeling of, I guess, not, I don't want to say insignificance, but this feeling of a higher power. For me, I'm not specifically a religious person, but anytime I read cosmic horror, I do get that feeling of being very, very small, very insignificant. And so I like being able to layer into the book this whole other story, perhaps, but just to hint at what this story is. And I think that's enough to kind of bring Dee and Emma's story into a different kind of weird focus. Um, yeah, I will say this was my first time writing a full-length story that had elements of cosmic horror, and I loved it. And my next book is going to be like full-on cosmic horror. So
Ooh,
um, it was very fun.
that's very exciting. Yeah, I like what bringing in that cosmic horror element lets you do. Because as you were saying before, the the sensuality that you are interested in creates a very tight focus sometimes. So then with the cosmic horror aspect, you get this almost like vertigo of like a sudden pullout, when
Mhm.
things become much bigger. Um, and yeah, I just really like the way that not being tied to one genre allows you to subvert a lot of expectations that sticking in one genre can perhaps create, if that makes sense. It gives you a broader toolbox for sort of breaking rules intelligently. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's breaking rules intelligently or chaotically. Um, but I'm happy when I hear it works. I know I know it's like hard a little bit for my publishers to decide how they want to position my books because they pull from so many different genres. Like especially Hold My Heart, it has a little bit of extreme horror, a little bit of romance, so no romance, erotica. Um, and so like where exactly does one position it? But yeah, like you said, it gives me so much freedom, um, and gives me so many ways to play with one story and to kind of like create themes on that story.
I'm really curious, since the last book I interviewed you about was Casual, which was one of my favorite reads of that year. It is such an interesting, and even though it's very different subject matter, I think there are some similar interests in terms of, just the focus on mental health as well as the horror of bodies in a sort of different direction, if that makes sense. Um, do you see your work in the future continuing to sort of explore those areas? I know you're bringing in a little cosmic horror, but how do you see this sort of in the context of your wider interests as a writer?
Yeah. Honestly, like I never set out to write books that are about mental health. But me personally, I've had struggles with mental health my entire life. And so when I write a book, they just these themes kind of come in on their own. And then once I'm in draft 2 or 3, then I start thinking about, okay, how can I be a little bit more responsible and a little bit more intentional about how I'm writing this? Because like in the first draft, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to write something that's fun and a bit bloody and a bit sexual. And then draft 2, I'm like, oh, wait, no, now I'm writing about mental health again. It's definitely something that is going to continue popping up in my work. I don't see myself ever writing a full-length story, a full-length novel that doesn't have themes of mental health in it.
Yeah, I am very interested in sort of how horror is such a really, I guess, fertile genre for exploring mental health because I think it invites you to sort of lean into like that really intense subjectivity of like an individual's experience and their perspective on the things that are going around them so that the audience can then like, identify with that person and be immersed in those experiences. So I'd like to talk about how that kind of relates to, I think like there are a lot of interesting things going on with repression in this novella too. Um, you talk a lot about, I think, through these characters, the repression of desire and the repression of memory through different means and what happens like when those things pop up. So yeah, can you tell me a little bit about how you were thinking through those things as writing?
Yeah, so playing with repression as far as well, this is my first book with playing with repressed desire, but in casual as well, I played with repressed memory. And I think that repressed memory is something that's very interesting to me. Um, Personally, I don't have a lot of memories of like my childhood and my young adolescence. And I have a very poor memory. And so I personally experience the world in this way where I discover my memories every time I have them. Like I don't necessarily know like, oh, this is what I'm going to be remembering. I don't know if that makes sense. Um, but it's something that I really like exploring in writing because writing is a very linear way to it's like a linear medium. And memory, I find to not be a linear medium. I find like experience and memory comes all at once, at least for me and for some people I know. And so I really like exploring memory, repressed memory in writing, because it allows you to kind of thread out how memory can layer on to current experience.
That resonates with me a lot too. I think I also experience memories in a very interesting way where they don't often like want to come to mind when I want to recall them or I'm trying to recall them, but then they will pop up in like interesting, weird times, like while driving or while grocery shopping and things like that. And so I like trying to capture non-linearity in a linear format like writing, as you mentioned. It's a very interesting and difficult sounding challenge. And I think it's why both perspectives are so immersive and so interesting. You are experiencing their sort of non-linear experience of their own lives. Yeah, this was just like a great read, and it was a really fun one to be like reading on a crowded plane.
I can't even imagine that. You are braver than me.
So you've mentioned a little bit about what's next for you, what your next book will be like. Is there anything else on your horizon right now?
I don't have anything coming up like in the next year, but I am working on a book, like I said, that is a cosmic horror. And hopefully at some point that will be out, and hopefully eventually a sequel to Casual.
That's very exciting for me. Well, I hope you will, perhaps come back for those when they come to fruition. In the meantime, Godspeed. Happy writing.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me again.
Oh, you're so welcome. Listeners, please check out Hold My Heart and check out Casual too while you're here. If you didn't check that out last time, it really is a very good read as well. And they read well together, I think, even though they're about pretty different things. Yeah, it'll be available when you hear this. So head to your favorite bookstore, library, website, wherever you like to go for books. Do you have a place you like to send people for books?
I always say whenever you can, go to the publisher's website, especially for indie publishers. So Hold My Heart is published by Ghost Orchid Press. So go to their website.
Excellent. All right. Thank you again for joining us. It is now time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.